We live in a culture that wants to fix things. When it comes to grief and pain, though, sometimes that can't easily be fixed, and yet we want to say things in response to grief that try to fix it, and often that's not particularly helpful. In today's episode, I want to talk about some of the less helpful things that we say and direct us to say things that might be more meaningful and more faithful. Stay tuned. Hello, friends. Pastor Tim Westermeyer here. Thanks for spending a little time with me today. We're continuing our series on some questions I've received over the last few weeks, and I'll just read this next one. It says, I would like a faith-based response to people who have the answers to illness and grief. Most of their suggestions are well-meant, but rather superficial. So what is this person talking about? Well, my hunch is she's talking about people who in the presence of, again, illness or grief say something like, this too shall pass. Or in the wake of a miscarriage, let's say, you're young, you'll have another child. Or at least they didn't suffer. Or God never gives you more than you can handle. Or God needed another angel upon a death. Or everything happens for a reason. Or maybe slightly more of an edge, a question that says, are you still grieving? Suggesting that you should be done or over it by now. Or again, you should be over this by now. This is a common one. God must have known you could handle this, or it's all part of God's plan, or just stay busy, you'll be fine. All those kinds of things. I've heard many people tell me about receiving those kind of comments. In my own life, my wife Amy and I have talked about this before. Our daughter Sarah has profound special needs. When she was diagnosed at the age of 1, we heard a lot of those kinds of things. So the question, again, the questioner says, I would like a faith-based response to how to respond to those kinds of statements. And if you're on the receiving end of those, I think one thing we can agree on is that they are almost always coming from a place of kindness and love. So I do want to acknowledge that. And if you've said things like that, the point of this short video isn't to beat up on you. We live in a culture that is we're not very good at entering into pain with people. We want to fix things, or we want to have the answer to things. And all of those statements I just read are attempts, not particularly well formed, I don't think, but they are attempts to make it better. The problem, of course, is in moments like this, there's nothing that's going to make it better. I mean, grief takes its own time. There's no sort of formula or specific pathway that's the same for everyone. And trying to tell people how they should grieve or giving them a reason for what happened typically is not very helpful. So if you are on the receiving end of one of those comments, I think you sort of have two options. You can either smile and nod and say thank you, and just accept that it's coming from a place of kindness. Or the alternative is if you want to sort of be a little more honest, you could just say something like, I'm sorry, but that's really not very helpful for me right now. But could you maybe just keep me in your prayers, right? Which leads then to, if you are someone who is looking for something to say to someone who is in pain, who is in grief, who has suffered some kind of tragic loss, what could you do rather than say those other things that I just read? I actually think that saying to them something very simple, because again, remember, you cannot fix it. That's not your job, nor do you have the capacity to fix it, even if it were your job. Your job in that moment is to basically remind the person that you know and love that you're there for them and that you're thinking of them. So I would suggest saying something simple like, I'm so sorry, period. And leave it there. Don't try to fix it. Don't try to make it better. Just say that. You can also then say, I am going to be keeping you in my prayers. If there's been a death, you can say, when you're ready, I would love to hear more about the person who's died, because very often people aren't willing to enter into listening about stories about whoever it was that they've lost. Simply being present with this individual, saying, I'll bring a meal, and sitting with them might be helpful. Again, I think we can learn by recognizing that our job isn't to fix it. Our job isn't to make it better. Our job is to be present. So I hope that's helpful. This is a frequent topic that comes up, and I'm grateful for the question. And again, if you have said stuff like this in the past, give yourself a little grace. I'm really not trying to beat up on you, but maybe this will help the next time you're in a position to respond to someone's grief, to say something that might be a little more helpful. So that's it for today. As always, thanks for being with me. Be well, stay in touch, and God bless.